Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shield's YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
Okay, I'm here for another episode of Talk to Thorin, and this one is going to be with Nifty, in-game leader of Renegades, and a lot of people in the early days, I remember when you came to the Selfless team, the first piece of trivia everyone mentioned about you wasn't like, oh, he's a good player or a good player. It was just always everyone just said he used to play Call of Duty, right? Now, initially, people probably meant that maybe a bit derisively, you know, because obviously CS players tend to look down on Call of Duty players generally and then console players as it is. Was there any actual overlap, do you think? Like, did some of the skills from Call of Duty transport over?
I would say in terms of transfer, it felt like more of the competitiveness transferred over, because I guess you can say I feel like I started as like such a young age, like competing like in competitions, you know, and like shit talking people and like yelling at people, you know, from like one station to the next when we're like playing at LANs and stuff like that, or just like that entire environment. So I feel like that kind of carried over, like almost as something that I was just used to. But as far as like learning Counter-Strike compared to Call of Duty, and the skills that are involved with both, it was completely new, you know, especially since I play Call of Duty on console and Counter-Strike is on the PC and it's the most legendary FPS of all time. So, I knew it wasn't going to be easy to learn, or I wasn't really setting any expectations for myself as well, for like, okay, you know, I'm going to pick this game up, I'm going to get it down pat in like 6 months, you know, and I'm going to be playing pro in like 8 months, you know, like I didn't set anything like that. I just kind of eased my way into it and just went with the flow. How
good were you actually at Call of Duty? Like, was it already the case that you knew you weren't going to get to the top of the game? Because obviously, I realize this, obviously your age, you wouldn't have been that, you would have been like 16 or something, but you know, when I look at the Call of Duty pros, it's true they're seen as smaller in some respects, but actually if you're a big star, it can be bigger in some respects. You see some of the mad sponsorship deals, like how massive their all social media is. So why switch to CS?
Well, I don't, for me, like it's never been, I guess this is where you and I might differentiate. For me, it's never really been a whole lot about like the money. I really just want to love what I do. And like, that's true. And I stick to that. And I'm joking with you just because like you always talk about Skrilla and all that stuff, you know, so, but at the same time, it was just a bad time for me to continue playing Call of Duty anyway, especially after I had already started playing Counter-Strike casually, because I just fell in love with the game. Like it was just so much fun, and I guess it was time for something new anyway, just because I had already played Call of Duty for 5 or 6 years. But yeah, I mean, if you were somebody like Nadeshot, you know, and you got like Red Bull sponsors, that was during the time that I was playing. Like I was watching Nadeshot get Red Bull sponsors, and all these kinds of things going on, YouTube channel blowing up, Twitch streams blowing up, you know, all that kind of stuff. That would have been fantastic, you know, but at the same time, I was just too young. I was too young to compete in the one tournament a year called Call of Duty Championships. Because just on Call of Duty in general, there's like a mature rating set to it. It was like 1 year it was like 18 plus you had to be to compete in this competition, and then the next year it could have been 17. You know, so it's like you had to be at least 17 to compete, and I was 14 at the time that I was playing professionally. So it's just I would have had to have settled playing in the tier 2 or tier 3 teams, and just attending like the MLG events, the standard MLG events, which would have been okay, but I don't know. I just started getting tired of Call of Duty, and I just fell in love with Counter-Strike, so it changed everything.
Okay, well, in that scenario, if you really did it just because you liked Counter-Strike, okay, I can certainly understand why someone would then just play and be able to handle initially being at the lower tiers in Counter-Strike, because for people who don't know, I know there's not really as much structure to leagues as there used to be in 1.6, but at the same time, you know, the leagues do go down pretty far, and essentially what I'm getting at here is once you get beyond the invite level, there's lots of Counter-Strike players trying to play like semi-pro, and people just don't know because they'll never see them at a big tournament. You know, they're not people you'll ever be familiar with. I mean, that's one of the reasons why that recent thing about people getting upset about CLG Red getting invited to that ESEA Advanced was hilarious, because it's like, I bet you couldn't name 5 other people in the league, you know, like, you know, these aren't teams any of us know. They're not famous. So the point I'm getting at here is, okay, yeah, if you just enjoy the game, anyone can handle just playing it, because that is fun in its own way. But was it intimidating to think, like, I've got to work my way through all of this stuff? And also, I mean, you know, you never can really know if you're going to make it to the top of a game. Did you actually have a natural confidence you'd make it?
I did, actually. I really did, but like, and I played a lot. Like, man, I was playing a junior, like the last half of my junior year in high school, and then all through my senior year, just casually in Counter-Strike, just playing like matchmaking, and then I finally got into ESEA Pugs. But as I was going to school, and I'm not trying to be like a bad influence to anybody, but this is just what I wanted to do, because I was really like in love with this, and that I wanted to do this. I wanted to be an esports player. You know, I was going to school on 3 or 4 hours of sleep every day, you know, even like falling asleep in some classes, but I still managed to pass with like flying colors. But like, that was the kind of love I had for Counter-Strike. And in terms of like intimidation, personally, I knew that it was going to be a mountainous task ahead of me. But I did share it with people, you know, like even people from the Call of Duty scene. Paula is a famous one who's mentioned it before on Twitter. I think even YouTube videos or just in interviews. You know, that he talked to me when I first started playing Counter-Strike, because I knew him from Call of Duty. Okay. And I had told him, like, look, man, I'm going to go pro, you know, and he was like, good luck with that, you know, just like, sure. You know, because it's a fair task. So, and then he talked to me, you know, maybe a couple times a year, and, you know, you check in 2-3 years later, he was going strong on YouTube. And he saw that I was playing professionally, you know, and he was just like freaking out. But I knew it was going to take time, and I was just going to roll with it because that's really what I wanted to do. And actually the person who was most, I guess you could say, I don't know, not really worried, but, you know, just like, you know, was my mom, because she's always been like my biggest supporter. But like, she really liked what I was doing in Call of Duty, but she knew how big of a switch it would be to actually just go over to PC and start playing this brand, you know, this whole other esport. And since I've been playing Call of Duty for 6-7 years, you know, I wasn't going to have the experience to bring that into Counter-Strike. So she was worried in a sense that, you know, I was like, oh my God, you know, like just like any mom would be, you know, like, is this going to work out? You know, like I'd rather just do what he was doing, you know, but I managed to change her mind pretty quickly. So.
Okay. So obviously the first place most people will have heard of your name in CSGO was when you were in the Selfless team. Like, this was the period of time where actually you could go to some of the bigger LAN tournaments. But I mean, as people I think will get from the theme of this interview, because it's kind of the story of how someone works their way up through the NA scene, you had the classic hurdle that everyone has when they go to the first tournaments, which is usually to get to these tournaments, you have to qualify through online qualifiers, and you have to play in online leagues, and you have to get to so basically you have to get so that you're good enough online to compete with CLGs of the world, you know, the teams that are like near to the top but not quite the absolute best teams. So when you then go to the LAN and you come last place, like I think it was like the Gfinity one with Evo, it's pretty bad. People are automatically going to say, even if it's just your first few big LANs, they're going to say, oh, they're all just onliners, you know. I mean, it's basically what an RG is experiencing right now, you know, except that's a bit more of an extreme version. People are going to say they're just online, and the implication even sometimes is they cheat, you know. Like, I mean, I remember, I think it was the guy you were playing with, Mitch, that people speculated was a cheater or something because he was just doing some nutty stuff online. What was this period like? Like, is it crushing when you go to a LAN and you come last place and you're getting shit on, but online, you know, you could play similar teams and it's fine? How do you handle that?
I actually think I had a really good experience to actually give this description, considering it was in London. So, you know, 7-hour flight, long travel day, you know, it's my first time even overseas. So, you know, during this time, we'd obviously been practicing hard, playing online matches. We had our coach behind us, Ryu, and we get to Gfinity, and the worst part, we didn't really set any expectations, like, oh, we're gonna go through, we're gonna win this event, we're gonna win all these matches. We're just gonna give it our best shot. We're just gonna do our best, see how it goes. We know that it's our first tournament together, my first Counter-Strike tournament as well, because I didn't even go into any like local tournaments like other CS players coming up might have gone to, like the Fragadelphias or
Sure.
Anything local to like Michigan or wherever they have them, right? I think the most crushing part about this experience was actually getting to London, and the very next day we played our very first match, and then we had to play the elimination match later on that day, and we lost both. So first day of the tournament, we were out, and we had to like twiddle our thumbs for the next 6 days, and that was it. That had to have been the worst part about that experience, because obviously you want to at least have a second shot, like the next day to kind of reset, because maybe your sleeping pattern's affected or the times that you're eating is affected, so that you feel energyless in the matches, so you always want that second day at least to reset. And I think that was the most crushing part about it. But for me, I felt like I performed like dog shit at the tournament, so I didn't really know how to take it, although I've obviously experienced that before in Call of Duty. But still, it was a moment. It's a moment that makes you, just think a little bit, not necessarily question yourself, but, think about, how you would have gone about it differently, or most importantly, like not necessarily lessons that you would learn in game, because that's too fast. I guess it will vary per person, but for me at least, that's something mindset related, something just to get used to, that kind of like a learning moment for me. Not so much in the game though, because like I said, very per person. It takes time to learn those kinds of things in game, like mistakes that you made, be able to recognize them instantly, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, because obviously the context of coming into these tournaments was you had famously been one of the few teams that had actually beaten the Luminosity squad. So basically Fallen, Caldera, all those guys in that online game. I think it was like I Buy Power or something, one of those. Like,
yeah, comps. It was.
And like that might not sound like a big deal, because people know if you watch like European EPL that you get upsets all the time. But actually in NA, that team was very consistent at not losing online. Actually, they were pretty dominant over the Cloud9s, the Team Liquids of the world. They used to pretty much win all the time. So obviously the drop-off of being able to beat a team that I think they were only like 2 weeks from winning the major at that point in time, and then come to LAN and have these problems. When you get to the point where you can win a match like that online, is there a part of you thinks like, I'm already there, like I'm good enough, like it's going to happen for me, just got to get a few LANs under my belt?
It depends on how naive you are.
How naive were you?
I think I was 40-50% naive in that situation. Because actually in that best of 3 online, I performed like well, like that was a really good game for us as a team and myself individually, like I felt a lot of confidence come from that online best of 3 in an I Buy Power tournament, but it's crazy how fast it changes. And like you said, like, yes, that was a time where they were extremely dominant, and it's funny because after we had beaten them, Fallen or somebody posted on Twitter, it was like, the only teams that we've lost to in a BO3 online and on LAN were Na'Vi, and I think Astralis, or at the time maybe TSM. Fnatic, okay, yeah, and then Selfless, and that was the tweet, and we kind of had some laughs about that because that was pretty funny. But yeah, no, I was a little naive about it. But again, like for me at least, what I'm learning is that it's more of like a mental thing as to how I learn personally. It's like just going through these experiences, the good and the bad, and kind of just gathering after that. And it just comes with time. I feel like for me, it depends on time. I don't really force myself to change my mindset on something or learn things, because I think ultimately that creates more problems than it would, just naturally allowing yourself to go with the course of, I guess, how things would normally go.
Were you in Selfless at any point, actually the in-game leader? Was that only when you got to Renegades?
So I did a little bit. It was actually during the time where we This was during a time where we lived in a team house in Atlanta, a suburb of Atlanta, and it was just us, the 5 players, and nobody in the house was over 20 years old. So that in and of itself was an experience I could never forget, I don't think. And during that period, I actually did in-game lead for about that 3-month period, and that online season I did, and I was god awful at it because it was something brand new to me. That was the first moment where I led, not because I wanted to, but because I had to, because there was nobody else on the team that would. But actually, by going through that experience, and then joining Renegades, like it allowed me to feel like and kind of learn about myself that I naturally am a leader. So, it's definitely something that I can do. It's something that I can pursue and become really good at.
Okay. When you came to join Renegades, like, this is a pretty interesting move, because on the one hand, with where you were in your career before, didn't seem, at least, like there was necessarily going to be those offers to the Team Liquids, the Cloud9s of the world. At that point in time, I mean, a lot of that stuff works on like internal buzz, like whether players think you're good or what your political affiliations are to the different teams and if they like you, etc. So the Renegades move seemed on paper like a pretty good idea, because it's kind of like you sidestep the whole NA thing. You get to go play in Renegades, which is, it's a known team. It's going to be at tournaments. Obviously, they have the minor, so they have their own kind of like direct access to go to the major, which isn't something you get to do if you're in a Selfless type team. But at the same time, it comes with the challenges that, sure, these people, yes, obviously all speak English, but they definitely have their own culture. And I know in that team especially, the reason why they hadn't actually ever allowed in NA players before is because they really believed that like there was a culture difference and they didn't want to do it. Because I know when, for example, my friend Monty Chris that owned the team, this is one of the reasons I told him to get the team, is because I said, eventually when you want to upgrade players, you'll just get NA players and it'll be kind of like a clever way to sneak them into this lineup and you'll get all the benefits of it. So was it tough to come into a team that was all these Australian players and had their own background story? And I mean, what was it like initially like in that sense? How did you even get to this team?
This was definitely something that I did not expect when at the time, because obviously at the time Selfless was kind of just slowing down, and they were just folding their whole operation. So it was kind of like in a hurry too, or else I would have just been teamless. Who knows? Maybe I would have been playing in an MDL team or something. But for sure, it was something that came out of nowhere. The name Renegades came up. I was able to be in contact with our manager that's currently upstairs right now, and we were just kind of chatting back and forth. And you wouldn't believe like the conversation that we had. Our very first conversation ever, and it seemed like things were going well. Selfless was going to make the sale of me to them. And then in the first few lines of us discussing things, and we jumped in TeamSpeak, had a little chat, I kind of, had some questions for the guys. They had questions for me. And up came the line, was like, okay, are you ready to go to a boot camp in Serbia next week? And I was just like, what the... like I've only been overseas one time, and that was actually 2 times, one in Brazil and one in London. But that was in and of itself a surprise for me. So that's kind of like how it kicked off, and we got right into things, and we started becoming best friends very early on, because we were very comfortable with each other, very comfortable with ourselves. But when it comes to actually playing with these guys, and at the time, that was actually when we had Nexa in the team. Yes. So if you look at this from my perspective, like, yes, we did have a house in the States. Do I know any of these guys at all? No. 2 Serbians on my team? Yes. 4 Australians? Yes. Do I know anything about them or their culture? No. So although we're living in the States, I know nothing about how these guys function, how they like to think, how they like to do things, how they like to speak to one another. So all of this I had to learn, and I'm still learning it now. I know these guys really, really well, but I'm still learning, and it's a super fun experience. But the culture differences, the way I like to do it is like, I like to compare them to Americans, but they're more of like a laid back version of Americans. they like to use the term like I'm easy, like almost as if somebody says like I'm good, or like no thank you, like I'm easy, so I feel like that speaks for their whole culture almost too, because the 2 times that I've gone to Australia for IM Sydney, a lot of the fans are like that as well. They just like to have a good time, have some drinks, and they actually have like really good conversation too. So this is something that I really love about the Australians. It's always been fun with these guys.
Right, in classic inimitable Thorin style, I've got to ask a question though, which takes what you just said there and makes it perhaps negative, because one of the things that has always seemed a bit underwhelming to me about that squad, even before you joined it, is if you ever watch when they had good games, you could always see some of these players were pretty good. I mean, for me, like Azza was the one that was like so obviously like really skilled. JKS was pretty good in clutch scenarios. There's like clear positives, but because they were a team that was owned by my friend and I knew them pretty well, and actually obviously I knew Sponge pretty well in the days when he was in the team. Basically, as far as I could tell in their team, Sponge, when he was the in-game leader, was, he was pretty into it. He was pretty competitive, pretty emotional guy, but they weren't having very good results. So unfortunately, that manifested in a negative fashion. Whereas the other players in the team, I got the sense that one of the issues was they were just super laid back. Like, they always looked like the team to me where when they went out of a tournament or they lost like a close game, like, I don't know if they were like dying inside, or if they were just like, I was trying so hard to, it's like, there's a part of it feels like it's hard to light a fire under their ass in the way that you would an NA team, if you know what I mean. What would you say to that? Oh man, there's so many things. Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird. Off the end of what you said about, lighting a fire under their ass, there are times where not everyone's going to be that player. Not everyone's going to be that competitor where when you lose, like there's just a burning sensation, like in the chest, and you can't stand it. You hate it, that it's not like that for everyone. And actually, like we don't, to my knowledge, we don't have anyone in the team that's necessarily like that. At least that voices the way that they feel, because that actually is that's what it's like in our team. There's not a lot of voicing on how people feel, and that's actually something that we're working on now, because we want to be able to do that, right? Like it's important for a team, especially that lives in a team house like this, so that everybody knows how each other feel, especially about like important situations like losing a match on LAN or losing a tournament in a terrible fashion. It's important. But naturally, they're not like that. But that doesn't mean that they're not competitive, because I know these guys and they care. They care a lot. They care a lot about their individual performance. They want to do well. They want to communicate well with each other in the game. We want to be a unit. We want to be a really good team. It's just it's those human factors that just come in. Like, these guys are more human than any other human I've met in the gaming industry. I know that might sound weird, but it's if you think about it, like you might actually understand. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of just, one day you may be like this, and the next day you might be a little bit like this. And that's actually exaggerated when we're traveling so much too. It almost has a bipolar effect in our team, and how I've been describing our team as of late. Is it's like two personalities. There's Bob and there's Jim. Let's say Bob is the good personality. Jim is the guy. We don't want Jim. We need to get rid of Jim. He's the guy who's going to show up. He's not really going to communicate. He's not going to bring the energy. He's not going to yell. He's not going to play to the standard that Bob would set himself to. It's like it's just a whole nother thing, and that is because of those human factors. And that's really like what our team is like. And I'm trying to learn more about this, and we're ourselves in Renegades, like we're trying to work on ways that we can develop ourselves in that sense, because we do have, when we play as a team, and I'm focused and I'm in the right mindset, and I can get the rest of my guys in that mindset and be focused as well, then we can truly beat anyone, and we can be competitive with anyone, especially even in a best of 3 series. And that's really what we're striving for right now. So
it's just, it takes time, you know?
Okay. So as you referenced, when you joined the team was when they had Nexa in the team, and that was actually part of, obviously, he's Serbian like Kassad is. Kassad had come over, he'd previously been the mouse sports coach, and now he's the coach of Renegades. And it's understandable why he wanted to try this out. You know, it's someone he knows. He thought he could craft him into in-game leader. But, you know, the results weren't exactly great at this point in time. Obviously, people will be aware Nexa is no longer in the team. He went a different direction. What was that period actually like? I mean, obviously at this point in time, he was the in-game leader, you were just a player, right? So what was this transition period like before you became the in-game leader?
I think that was a huge... how long did we play for him? Maybe I think we played with Nexa for maybe 5 months, 4 or 5 months.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like right before the player break. And they got myself and Nexa in April. So yeah, it was like about 4 months. I would say that whole entire period and experiencing, especially the first month, because the very first month of the team, Nexa was calling because that's how Kassad wanted it. So I came in, and that was when I was just opping. I feel like those 4 months for me were like kind of like a developing stage. You know, like I wasn't doing a whole lot of talking. I was doing more so listening and trying to understand what these people are like around me and how I can best adapt myself into their environment. So it was really odd, but every single day was something new. Especially when I started calling, because even though I had done it for a few months in Selfless, I still wasn't so very comfortable. However, Kassad made it very easy for me to, like, okay, you know, he's my coach. You know, we have a connection now that he's coach and I'm in-game leader. We're going to work together on things. He's going to help me. So he made it very easy for me there, and he was behind me 100% of the way, even when I asked him. I asked him in the hotel after IM Sydney when we got crushed by Chiefs, when we were out of the tournament after that, you know, can I lead this team? Can I be in-game leader, and can I op? And he was like, yes, but I just want to know a few things. So he proceeded to ask me a few questions. I answered them, and he was behind me 100% of the way. So that made me feel very good. However, the next obstacle was gaining the trust of the players around me, like players like JKS and Azza and Ustillo, and I guess Nexa too. But that was the hard part. You know, I had to show them that, yes, I could make good reads. Yes, I can work hard. Yes, I can perform my other ability in the game, which is to op at the same time. You know, so all of these things were obstacles, and they still are obstacles. You know, we're still working through those things. We're still making it so that everybody can be comfortable, especially myself, because, again, like every tournament that I play in, every online match we go through, every online qualifier, every practice we go through, it's something new that comes up every single time. And there's no way of being able to learn and understand all of it. So you really just have to take it piece by piece. And this is why I feel like over time, I'm going to become one of the best in-game leaders, one of the best operators, one of the best players, one of the best teammates that anyone could ever ask for. And I think developing up alongside of guys like these, where we're such good friends outside of the game, as well as inside of the game, you know, I couldn't really ask for a better place to grow.
What kind of a coach is Kassad? Is he strict?
Yeah, he is. He is strict. I'm sure, you know, he would say the same thing. So, his style of coaching, I would have to say, it's more of like an old school kind of coaching. You know, it's like, yes, he will yell, yes, he will raise his voice, yes, but this is because, one, he's angry, but two, he's very passionate. So when he knows that something's wrong, or somebody's not listening, or somebody's not paying attention, or we're just not doing this right for some reason, even though he's explained it several times, you know, he's going to voice how he feels. And that's something that he always did. But the thing is, it's like you take the good with the bad, because he's one of, well, I guess it depends on how you look at it as well, because maybe you're somebody that likes to learn in that capacity. Maybe you like somebody to yell at you, or you know, you like to hear that authoritative voice, you know, who really sounds like he knows what he's talking about. but at the same time, it's like you take the good with the bad because I mean, I haven't worked with many coaches, but I imagine that he's one of the best coaches out there that actually is able to break down a round or an instance and be able to understand and repeat it back to a team, even though English is not his first language, how we should adjust or what we should do differently. So hearing this out of because and also when it came to practices, strategic ideas and things like and like little moves and little plays, like little gimmicky things. When he really like got down and like got into it, like there'd be mornings I would come out of my room and he would be like crisscross on the floor, and we have like big maps like printed out, and he would be sitting on the floor looking at the map, and like moving like little pieces around like a chessboard, like trying to envision a strat or how it would work. So like he has that kind of passion, like that level of passion. And I think something that he may have learned, especially from his time with us, is that the more that he can bring the passion out in him, without losing the entire or trying to change the entire way that he likes to coach, being loud, being angry, and having that authoritative voice, I think he could become an even better coach having been with us and talked about the things that we talked about. So he's definitely take the good with the bad coach. He's really good in some instances, and there's some instances where people just might not like him.
What on earth was that move where after the player break you brought in the now infamous JZ Walkings, who was previously known as like the star AWPer of the Fnatic Academy team, and instead he came into your team, became some sort of support player, and just basically shit the bed at one LAN and then was just kicked? Like what really happened with that? Whose idea was that?
It was really not like anyone specifically like their idea. It was, we had to make a decision as a team because we needed somebody for Malmo, but there was nobody coming to us. We didn't really have the pick of the litter. So we had to get somebody for that tournament, and we had to get him right away. But we knew that he wasn't going to be permanent, and we voiced it with him that he wasn't going to be permanently on the team as well. So he knew that he was only going to be around for maybe a week, 2 weeks or so, and especially for Malmo. So we played that tournament with him, and honestly, to him, like he was a really cool dude. He was a good teammate. He really gave it his best considering what he signed up for. So, I really do wish that guy nothing but the best, and it was fun with him when we actually spent that time with him. So, but we already knew that we were going to be getting NAF afterwards. So, we just, again, it was just a kind of flip of the switch. Like we just needed something now.
Okay. So then when this happens, you bring in NAF. At the time, wasn't exactly at the greatest fanfare around the move, because obviously the Optic team he'd been in had just kind of wasted the year, because without Stanislaw, they'd tried all those different people as in-game leader. They'd never really had any results, and so everyone kind of looked at that team like, if anything, they were probably waiting for them to go to Cloud9 and Team Liquid and all these squads. So again, he kind of did a move a bit like yours. He did like the sideways move. He went to Renegades, but I don't think people expected that much from it. But everyone will remember now, for most of the time he was in Renegades, he was putting up really good stats. He was having these really massive games. Now, I saw he said in an interview something along the lines of that when he joined the team, I mean, in the vein of what you said about JZ Walkings, like it was implied that when he first joined the team, he was going to be a supportive element within the team. And then he said something in an interview, this is after he joined Team Liquid, along the lines of like, but then I told them like, no, I want to be like a star in the team, or I want to have like more of the focal point around me, So how did that all play out? I mean, if you're the in-game leader, you presumably get some say in these things, right?
Yes. However, I think it was weird for myself and everyone else on the team, bringing NAF in, because the thing is, like, everybody on our team knew how good he was. So it's like we were giving everything up that we knew, everything that we did to play into him. And I wouldn't advise this to anyone else, because it was a bad move at first. That's what we tried at first. And we knew that it didn't work, because then what the hell are we doing? We're just, it's like we talked to him. We're like, you can have any spot you want, play wherever you want, whatever makes you comfortable. However, his response, and I think this is just because of his personality. He's a very passive, reserved, introverted guy. So he would always say like, no, just put me anywhere. It's okay. I'm comfortable anywhere. And well, the truth is, like, he really could play any spot. He had that level of intellect about the game and that level of skill about the game that any spot he's playing, as long as he has a little bit of support, he could do it all. And I think that's how we viewed him at first. And I think that was a mistake, not because we couldn't do it or he couldn't do it, but it just wasn't going to be good for the team. How can we function like that? So, instead, we shortly after, like, we tried changing some spots, and then we just said, like, let's just do what we used to do. Let's just do our thing. Let's just play like how we normally did, and he can just fit into us. He's more of that kind of player anyway, but he doesn't really know. He might know now, but he didn't really know how to like voice it. He wasn't going to be assertive and say like, look, I'll play around you guys. Like he has that level of intuition and just understanding of the game and like his teammates, even with low communication, to be able to perform like that. So that's basically what he did, and he found stardom in that, which is insane because that's not easy to do. And yes, he's been playing Counter-Strike for a while and he's been playing at the top for a while, but it's like, hands down, like he did extremely well at that, and I give him props. And there's a little bit of envy there because that's not easy to do, and that's kind of like how we functioned in the team for those 3-4 months with him. And we had great success, I suppose. It ended poorly, but that's all right.
Whenever you have a situation like that, where even just statistically, beyond like, highlight rounds and whatever, just statistically, one player's getting really, really good stats and the rest of the team, they're all right, but it's not like everyone in the team has that kind of numbers. You are going to have people shape the narrative as like, right, this guy carries that team, there'd be nothing without him. Like, oh, he has to have a big beer for them to win the game. And the downside of that is when people hear that in teams, sometimes they don't appreciate that. Like they feel like their contribution doesn't get any credit, or even worse, they think like, oh, that guy doesn't just do it all himself, I give something up to help him or whatever. Or they just actually sometimes, like you're saying, they're being a bit envious. They can feel a bit resentful. Like, hey, if I was set up to be the star, maybe I could be the best player in this team. What was the atmosphere in the team like when he was having all these great performances? But, the team, aside from a couple of lands, wasn't, going to the final of all the big tournaments, etc.
Well, our relationship with him was odd in a couple ways, just because yes, he wanted to do all these things, and yes, he was performing really well, but nobody was necessarily complaining. We were having success. We were getting these wins. I would say the person that took the biggest hit on the team was JKS, because all the spots that JKS played, Naf then took over, so he had to learn new spots. He had to play different things. And what I've learned about JKS is that he is a creature of habit. That's very, very rough. That would be very, very rough for him to make him move so many spots and play so differently, because he just he plays best when he's in his comfort zone, when he feels comfortable. He's not necessarily somebody that can adapt to every single situation, but that's okay, because when he's in his element, I don't really feel like there's anybody that could be better than him, because he's such a breakout player, that when he does, like, he's so confident. It's like seeing another player, it's beautiful to see too. But it's like playing with Naf was weird, because slowly over time, like, we just developed this relationship where it's like it was mutual. He didn't really want to play with us. We slowly decided we didn't really want to play with him, mainly because of just he didn't fit our team personality wise. Like, yes, we performed well together, but in terms of longevity, it just wasn't going to work, because he was too reserved, too introverted. He wasn't the most fun-having dude. So he just didn't fit well with the personalities within our team. So that ultimately led to his escape to Liquid. So there really isn't a whole lot more to communicate on that, just because we were only played with them for about 3-4 months.
Okay. So obviously the crowning moment of this period of time was the Star Ladder I-League Invitational number 2, the one where the crucial context behind it was because it was right after the Epicenter tournament where Virtus.pro really almost won that tournament and had like a weird throwback event where they looked amazing again. They had all these epic games, against all the best teams in the world, beat the likes of FaZe, etc. Obviously went close with SK. When they then came to this tournament, they were the big name, and in fact, most people thought, right, well, let's see who's in this tournament. What, Hellraisers and Renegade? Oh, they should obviously win this tournament, and VP's back. So, what a lot of people don't know about this tournament is they know that in the final, Renegades won, but they don't know that actually you lost to best of 3 to Virtus.pro earlier in the tournament in the group stage. So, what was the tournament like from your side of the equation? And since you got to play Virtus.pro twice at this one, what was their form like at that tournament?
So going into this tournament, this is one of those moments in my career, in my experience being an in-game leader and an opper. It was very hard for me, especially because it's just these stages that you go through, and the stage that I was going through at this time was I noticed too many things, too many negative things. Which resulted in me being in my own head too much. It resulted in my tone of voice being lower than it normally would be, and talking with enthusiasm and confidence and conviction. And I was going through this like mid-tournament, we were playing Have You or something, and I think we won, and I felt like complete shit even after we won. Like I just couldn't stand like myself, but also like the situation that I found myself in. It's like, how do I get out? Like I was in a box, like screaming for help, please, somebody. But like there wasn't really anyone that's just apt to do that, at least on our team. So I mean, I really had to take especially the night that we lost to Virtus.pro. I jumped on the desk after that and did a little on-desk interview, and I told them that we're going to come back as a completely different team tomorrow, because after that game, I had decided that, I'm going to change myself around. Like, I'm going to do something differently. I'm going to come back tomorrow the way that I should be, the way that I should sound, the mentality I should have, the way I should perform. And that's exactly what we did all the way to the end of the tournament. And we played really, really well, and we had a lot of fun together. And I was very, very proud of like my team, but also like myself, because although from an outside perspective, you may look at it as a smaller tournament or, not a whole lot of competition, but like the challenges that we as players face are unbelievable sometimes. So some players are lucky enough to bypass those things, but the players that are meant for greatness and that are more in tune will face these challenges. And that's like, those are the things that are hard to get through. But once you get through them, you feel really well.
Even if Virtus.pro, like, yes, in that context, they just had this really good result. Even if at that point in the time, it's not the same as Virtus.pro from like 2 or 3 years back, where they're one of the best teams in the world, yeah. And, it's very rare they're ever losing best of threes. It still means something when you get a win on them on LAN like that in a final, right? Yeah,
a memorable moment, I think, was once we had actually beaten them in the final, and we walk out of our booth, they all had smiles on their faces. They were being very, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Magnanimous?
No, it's like when one player, is nice to another player, even in a loss or something. It's
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. They just like they were happy for us, but at the same time, like they felt okay, which I think is a really good approach for them to have. I'm not sure exactly what was going through their heads, but I don't know. Like it gave me a sense of like, like this is cool. This is really. I'm really glad that they didn't come out of their booths, absolutely destroyed. Like they were being good competitors. Like they showcased maturity. And I remember, I think Neo was the very first player that I saw walking across the stage, and he was just like, hey man, great job, and just like a little pat on the back and a handshake. And I think that's like really, really cool, to experience that, especially if you're a player like myself that hadn't been playing for very long, and you're aware of who these guys are, and you just beat them in a final of a tournament, even like this. you can't forget the feeling. I can't forget the sight. So.
Since being an in-game leader is not something necessarily was always going to be on the cards for you. I mean, generally, it's one of the strange things about being a leader is like not all of the players who do it now, chose to do it. In fact, a number of the players that are currently very good in-game leaders. So you think of people like Glaive, you think of MSL, Karrigan, some of these players have had times in their career where they weren't the in-game leader, but it's clear that it's defined them. So it's something they had to choose to like embrace. And then once they go in, it's not like they're doing it like when MBK became in-game lead recently for like 3 months, They're not just saying, right, I'm going to do it for a little while, and if it works, cool. They're kind of like, right, I'm just going to do this. And in a way, if I fail, well, then I'm going to fail, and it's going to go badly, and I'm going to look stupid for a year. But if I succeed, I can hopefully build up to a level where, hence most of the in-game leaders that we could name off, they're pretty iconic at this point in time. Everyone knows their style, everyone knows their system, what kind of players they work with. So it's a pretty all-in task. For me, it's one of the biggest responsibilities you can take in the game. Are you fully all in on it at this point in time? Like, will Nifty be an in-game leader for the next 2 or 3 years? Because every time there's people discuss roster moves, they either say, why don't they just bring Nifty into why doesn't he join Cloud9 as just a player, and have someone else be the in-game leader? Or why don't they bring a player as an in-game leader into Renegades and make Nifty just an AWP, People speculate maybe you can move away from this. So are you all in on it? Is it something you want to do for a long time?
I am, and it is something that I want to do for a long time. It's really it was an interesting path for me to actually find that this is like what I wanted to do. And now I haven't played under any legendary in-game leaders or very many in-game leaders at all. I think the only one I actually played with was Slemmy. And I think and like I referred to earlier, like I'm a natural in-game leader, or just a natural leader in general, because I am like that in real life. But playing the game, I noticed that I could never. I really don't think that I would be able to compete in a team unless like there was like my seal of approval on it for like this leader, But like that's kind of weird, But I don't know. I don't think I could play on a team and not lead it, just because I have the confidence that I can so well, and we can win tournaments and become the best team in the world, because it's just like I can't stand actually being led by somebody else. I don't know why. It's just that's what I felt with Slemmy. It's like Slemmy's style for many players. It fits fine. Like people are probably okay with it. People that like to be led are probably okay with that. But to me, I was just like, I can't. I can't. Like I have to leave. Like I have to leave. I want to lead. I want to learn this. I want to learn how to do this in the best way. And I know that there's so many challenges, that come along with it, but I'm willing to face those challenges and actually learn. So, yeah, I know it sounds weird to say like, I could never, play under another leader and just AWP, it's like, who knows, who really, really knows? Like, I don't even know, but I'm very confident at this point that, if I were to do anything, if I were to play with anyone, I have to lead and I have to AWP. And if any other team, if I were to ever be on any other team, they would just have to understand that, and they would have to believe in me, because I also wouldn't want to join a team that doesn't believe in me, or also maybe hear from see from players, or get the vibe that like I was like second or third option. So it's like, okay, we'll just deal with it. Like fuck that, like that's bullshit. Like I know what I'm worth. I know how good I am. So it's like you take me as it is, and you trust and you believe. And you give me what I'm looking for, and I'll give you what you're looking for. So that's kind of how it is for me, and that's how it is with these guys. And again, like all these things, like we're just working on them time and time, like just building blocks. So
you've made quite clear your admiration for Fallen from SK Gaming, and obviously people will see like natural parallels. Both AWPers, both actually have quite a fast sort of flick firing style as in-game leaders. I mean, Fallen actually in the last few years has been a bit more of a looser in-game leader. Admittedly, he kind of has there's a context to that, which is he did sort of like teach some of the people he's playing with how to play the game. So in a way, he can be a bit looser because they're kind of playing the way he wants them to anyway. Aside from the obvious parallels, what appeals to you about Fallen's style of in-game leading, or why is he the person you're looking to?
he just even before I ever exchanged words with him in real life, he just seemed to me like somebody who's always trying to do their best, somebody who's always trying to learn, somebody who, if things are going wrong, he's always trying to find a way to do them better. And maybe if they're lost, then that's okay. Like he's just like, that's fine. Like it's done and over with. Let's move on. And that for me, that's very admirable because you don't see that in too many people in general. So to me, that was unique. And at the same time, being able to lead the team that he led, the players that he led, and win the tournaments that they won and face all of the challenges that they actually had, swapping to Phelps, to Bolts, the whole FNX thing, like going through all of this, even after all the success that they had and continued to have success. And although he has voiced it that he's dropped off in personal performance, like Bad Fallen and stuff, and like he jokes about it, but I mean honestly, like if I were to tell him anything, it's like I'm not really sure why he does that either, because he's so individually skilled. And sometimes, because I see it myself as well, like sometimes when I'm watching him play, like I'll see points where, yes, nowadays it could be communication because they're playing with Stewie, so something could be weird, so you don't know for sure. But I see points where it almost looks like he's not confident in himself, and like that sucks for me to see, at least, because I know how good he is, and I wish that I could just like voice to him like, bro, like you're so good. Like if you just believe in yourself all the time, especially with all the achievements and the accomplishments and the things that you've gone through now, it's like how can you never not play like this? You know what I mean? But it's like you just don't know the challenges that people are facing. So, he could just be going through a period and maybe it's longer than others. So you just don't really know. But and also on the top, back onto the topic of just about him in general, like being that fast flicky opper, that was instrumental into like idolizing him in a sense, because I'm the same way. Like ever since I started opping, I was always the same way. Just I wanted to be fast. I wanted to be constantly moving. Like people always talk about how I'm always moving, always hopping around and stuff. And it's like, if the opper is doing it right, and you're confident and you're hitting these timings, there's nothing more annoying than somebody who's extremely fast and they're everywhere. Because you ask anyone who played Fallen in their prime, like in his prime, he was just unstoppable. He was everywhere. You didn't know where to peek. You didn't know where to look because he's going to be everywhere. You weren't sure what to do on T side because CT side he was everywhere, and all of these things. Like it was incredible to see, And I looked at it and I was like, I feel similar, So that's kind of how it is for me.
So everyone knows at some point we're going to obviously talk about that epic game against Mouse Sports. But actually, before that, people forget there was a pretty good match before that where you beat FaZe Clan in a best-of-3 online, which is not exactly a joke. I mean, this is admittedly when they had Exist. But first of all, it wasn't the first tournament. I think it was like the second tournament they'd used Exist. And they did also, obviously, later on, go on to win this fucking LAN. So it wasn't like they were a garbage team, even though, yes, they had some issues at this tournament. What was that best of 3 like to beat them in a match like that? Because obviously they're a team that, your team's played many times in other tournaments, and as you'd expect with such a dominant team, they won nearly all those matches, So what was this moment like?
So this was a incredible moment for the team, absolutely, because this was the moment that we qualified onto the stage. So this is where these guys have wanted to be. This is where we have wanted to be. The entire year, ever since last IM Sydney. So that had been a goal for us for a very long time. This match was very, very important. And I honestly couldn't have thought of a better time for players like JKS and Azza and Ustillo to step up and actually like play not even close to the level that they can play at, but to play extremely, extremely well and play confident and communicate the way they did. That was lovely for me to see. Like, I was so pleased, but at the same time, like, I had this other battle going on where, like, I couldn't even fight Guardian. I could not win a duel against Guardian. I couldn't peek him. I couldn't hold an angle on him because if he peeked me, he was faster. I don't know. I went like 0-97 versus him in that whole best of 3. Didn't kill him once. So like for me, that was very stressful because even losing one op duel in a game is annoying. It's just annoying because it's straight up, and like you just feel when you win, you feel a sense of dominance over the opponent, and it's kind of similar like when they win against you. It's like, oh, fuck, like, I got to figure out what he's going to do next, right? So it feels weird, and it was painful. That game was very painful for me, but I learned a lot from it. So it was important for me in a sense. But what was extremely important was that I never gave up, and I never I always had confidence in what I was calling, the setups I was calling on CT side, the communication I had, talking to my teammates even while I'm getting owned. That's what was very, very important, because if were losing to these op duels from the very start of the first map and I just let it get to me, I don't think we would have won the game because they wouldn't have heard much out of me. Like they would have heard my tone of voice drop. They would have heard me not talk as much. They would have seen me not being as confident as I should have been, as I normally am with the op and taking the fights, taking the duels that they know that I'd like to take. It's very easy to notice that difference in an opper when something's affecting them. So what was very important is that I kept my cool, and players like JKS and Azza and Ustila, they all stepped up and played incredible. And also props to Jacob as well. He had a really good game. So again, like for me, from my point of view, it was just lovely to see, and I couldn't have been happier with like any other way other than, of course, a better performance for myself. But yeah, it was a good game.
So then when later on you got into the bracket stage and you were playing in this mouse sports match, as you said, in the phase series, even though the team won, you were something of a liability, like you didn't have a great game yourself. When you get to the now legendary Inferno game, I mean, this looks like basically what every player who tries to become a pro dreams is going to happen one day. You dream you're playing all these good players and everything's working, you're hitting every shot, anything you do seems to work out. Was it different than any other game when you were actually in the game? Like, did you know like how many kills you're getting and the fact that everything seems to work? Was that really present in your mind?
It's like nothing mattered. It was like nothing mattered. It's like nothing could have swayed how I felt. Nothing could have swayed how I was playing. It's like, didn't matter if I pulled up the scoreboard, if we were losing, like 9-15. None of it mattered, because I knew that whatever I was going to do, whatever peak I took, whatever battle I took, whatever timing I hit, I knew it was going to work every single time. And I knew that it was going to set the rest of my team up for success as well. It was, I think, one of the most exhilarating factors about the game is that, yes, even though we did lose 16-8 on Mirage, the first map, I felt like I didn't have a chance to do what I knew I was going to be able to do in that series. Like, I just knew, like there was something. And before the game even started, I took a picture on stage and tweeted like it's time, like a picture of the crowd. And it's like I jumped into an aimbots after that, and I maybe did like 200 kills, and like every single shot was instant. It was fast. There was no delay. There was no missing. There was nothing. Like, I felt like I was more ready than I have ever been before. And this was my very first time on a big stage in front of a big crowd. And this is what I've been wanting for ages. We were in Poland at IM Katowice, and I was talking to Stewie, and I was like, look, man, I want to be in these shoes. Like I want to walk in these shoes that walk on stage, that play in front of big crowds and win games and lift trophies. Like, I want to be there, and here we are. Like, we find myself at IM Sydney. We're on the stage. There's a trophy in front of me. There's a crowd in front of me, and I have great teammates around me, and we're going up against mouse sports. Like, I couldn't have asked for anything better. So I just felt like I really wanted to show people what I was all about. And that kind of just like reigned over me, and that game happened. So
Right, I know when you play under these circumstances, usually there's like the white noise in your ears, and sometimes there's like a special headset that blocks out crowd noise, etc. But players always see, you can always feel like vibration if the crowd's going nuts, or you can something gets through. Like for example, if you talk on your mic, something comes in, right? Even though obviously you are not Australian, since the team is Australian and obviously has successfully branded itself in that sense, and so every time it goes to a tournament like IEM Sydney, they're going to have crowd behind them, etc. Could you tell people were going ham during the game when you were playing like this?
Yes, but not in an advantageous way. When 7,500 people all yell at the same time, yes, you can hear that. Like every time I got a kill, I could hear, like after I got the kill, the crowd going crazy. But it never led to anything more than that. If anything, it fired me up even more. Like it made my adrenaline pump. Like I loved it, like this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here, to like give these guys a show. Like I want to win, but I want to give these guys a show. That was actually something I left out in the last one was the like playing after we had lost the first map to Meta Sports. I was just like, and then we were down 11-4 at the half Inferno. I felt like I hadn't heard the crowd at all. So we were almost about to lose this series 2-0. And it wouldn't have even felt like we were ever on stage, ever. So the only thing that was going through my mind was like, something needs to happen. Like I want to hear the crowd. I want to see reactions, like I want us to have fun, because we also weren't having fun because we were getting fucking crushed. So, this is what was going on, and I was like, something needs to happen. But yes, when 7,500 people all yell at the same time because you just hit a sick off shot, you can hear it. Something that was incredible that I could also never forget is that we were finishing up one of the rounds in overtime, and the last person was like saving. It was like Oscar or something, and you can hear the Nifty chant. Like I could just hear it. It was silence in the game, no grenades going off, no shooting. And we were just like running around looking for him because he was saving. And I could just hear the Nifty chant. And it was like unbelievable. Like I stopped for a second. I was like, you guys hear that? Like that's insane. But I mean, it was a moment, that I could never forget. And I could describe it down to a T to anybody that ever asks.
What has it actually been like having Jacob come into the team? Because obviously he's someone where, I mean, for most of this year, he's been basically kind of like out in the wilderness, no one ever knew if he'd be back on a top team again. He was playing for some lesser teams at times, and even then, it didn't seem as though he was necessarily going to be permanent on those squads. And actually, him joining your team was a bit out of left field for most people, They didn't necessarily expect that that's the name you'd draw from. At someone else, from the little I know about him, I've met him a few times, talked to him a few times. He seems like a fairly reserved guy in his own way, He's not. I mean, he's Norwegian, so he's not exactly like super extroverted or whatever. What's the concept been of what he's going to do in the team? How does he fit into the squad? These sorts of things.
So the importance that Jacob carries is his personality, and he's very fun, very funny. He's always cracking jokes. He's very easy to just do the dance with. So we decided like right at the end of Katowice, like we want him permanently, period. Like we want him. So, because he fits our team personality wise, he fits in terms of growing, like how we want to grow as a team, proceeding forward. So, that's the importance he carries, is that he's just so, he's always positive. I've never even heard him communicate something negative ever. And like, that's so good to hear and to have, especially when you're in games, and you're losing. It's like, it doesn't mean it's going to stop you from losing, but it's very nice to have because it's comforting, it makes losses easier. It makes winning better. But something that I actually would love to have from him more is that, because he's always cracking jokes outside of the game, he's always having fun, and we're always having fun together, I would love for him to like bring more of that in the game, like he does it a little bit here and there. I'm not saying like do it every round, like, it would be hard, to be funny, all the time. But, what's so good about him is that he can do it so naturally, so easily, that it doesn't require so much effort. So if he could carry more of that into the game, they would make it so much more enjoyable for all of us, and it would help us allow ourselves to reset after every single round. It would help us. Like reset after something stupid happens, or after a map. In between maps we're talking about it. It's just it's good to have that person that lightens the mood. So he's super important there, but not only that, like in terms of individual skill, he can be so good. Like he can be such a good player. It's crazy to see, and I had never played with any other Europeans ever besides Nexa, and he was kind of upcoming himself. So playing with somebody with Jacob who had the experience that he has, it's great to see, because he always has really good input as well. He always has something good to say about the situation, and useful input. So he's very, very important there. His voice is important. I hope he knows that by now. I hope he knows that he's not the new guy, because it's very important to share his side of things and how he feels and what he thinks. So he's a great teammate to have.
Right, at the end of this interview, do you have a final message or someone you want to thank or say hello to?
No, I mean, let's see. I mean, the fans and supporters that we have for our team is actually unbelievable, because even when we're going through like our rough stages, which I guess you can say right now is one, I don't really see it as that, but it's like these guys, the people that are always tweeting us on Twitter and leaving comments like wherever, or messaging us, friends, whatever, family. It's always like it means more than like people actually believe, because it's important. We're just we're gamers, but we're also human too. So everybody wants to hear good things being said about them. So please, like, share only good things about each other and about us as players. It's like after win or loss, like we want to hear good things. It's like you guys are excited to see how we compete next match. Like forget about this one or something like that. It's important. So we love to hear that. Shout out to all of our sponsors. I'm actually loving this Alienware jacket right now. And on top of that, shout out to my mom, because she's my #1 supporter.
This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Mikkel Hansen, Bash, Daniel Yordanov, Yordan Tsenkov, TTMXMP, VeXii, HawpT, Robert Baxter, Travis Greb, and a special thanks to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to get teasers for my upcoming work? Find out who's coming next, what topics are being discussed? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to appear on one of my shows or in one of my videos? Would you like to ask a question in my monthly Patreon AMA, or perhaps even discuss esports as part of a discussion show I run on a monthly basis? Donators can also discuss the topics expounded upon in my videos with me and the other patrons on our Patreon page. All of this and more at the Patreon link below.